It's spring week 5 in Apothecaria, and in this rest period, Mistress Sweetwater takes her first excursion into Blastfire Bog. Hey everyone, welcome to Drawing Expressions. I'm Parz. Yeah, we've been going at this Apothecaria-based episodic writing journey experience thing now for a long time. Yeah, this is the rest period on week 5, so that makes it, what, 11? This is the 11th episode. 2 per week, and then the prologue as well. So yeah, so we're at number 11. Yeah. It's crazy. It's awesome. Loving it. Okay. So before we start to get into all of the story and the stuff, let us first do where I like to begin, which is guidelines. The guidelines bend, rules break. Yeah. So stick to the guidelines. They'll never fail you because they don't break. Okay, in the planner section today, it's the same planner section that we do every time now. This is doing the story narration and then also where did the stuff come from within the creative mixing bowl. Within the pantser section, we have a little discussion set up today for fun with Easter eggs and references. So with that said, let's move on to breathing and stretching. Sit up straight, have your sit bones nicely in your chair, and take a nice deep breath in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing in. And a little stretch. There we go. Okay, great. So yeah, this is the rest episode on week 5, and we're just going to dive right into reading the episode, and then we hear about all the where did it come from afterwards. So this is called Miss Bogfire. Quiet, blessedly quiet, the crackle of the occasional stick popping open in the hearth as I sit and sip and relax. It seems like life has become either frantically busy as I run around gathering necessary reagents, dealing with the environs where I have to go to find them, or the blessed peace in between cases. I know I'm needed here. Every time someone needs help and I'm able to provide it demonstrates just how much I'm needed. But what I want is more of this: peace, solitude, harmony. On the flip side, the last couple of weeks has been full of time off. Aside from cleaning up endless messes, I suppose I should be grateful that the last encounter didn't end up with my place a total wreck. Who would have thought a vampiric necromancer could use a mop? Thank you, Cottage, for not laying that cleaning job on me. And also, on the flip side, I've been doing quite nicely for myself monetarily. I think it's about time that I added something to the cottage, or something that will assist me as I go about the gathering of potion makings. And for that, it's to the village I go. I'm sure Bob will have just the thing, even if I'm not sure what that thing is yet. I gathered up a few things and prepared to head out. As I stopped in front of the spirit house to let it know my intention to head off, I spotted Mouseye in what has become his place in the structure. He opened an eye. Heading out? Yes, to the village, and I think you should come too. Visibly. He just looked at me. Must I? I think it would be good for you. I know you like to watch and observe, mostly out of sight, but I think you should consider being visible at times too. He didn't move. He just laid there and looked at me. Sigh. Fine. Yes, Mouseye, you must. He took his turn to sigh. Okay. As we headed to High Rannoch, Mouseye on my shoulder, I talked. about how well things were going, about all the things we'd seen and done, about all the adventures we had. Mouse-Eye kept up an unenthusiastic to my observations. So I stopped talking, and instead let my mind wander to an imagined stock of goods at Bob's shop. Nothing really inspired my excitement, even when I dreamed of impossible things like trees that cut themselves down, chopped themselves up and stacked themselves as firewood, or a scullery that magically did all the dishes. Oh well, I'm sure actually seeing Bob's inventory will cure me of needing to dream of something worthwhile. Mouse-Eye, what do you think I'll buy today? Maybe this wasn't the best idea. Anyway, I'm not letting a certain someone's attitude ruin my day. I'm going shopping, and that's that. Unwilling companion or no. It's hard to ignore the sorry state of the boundary between High Rannoch and the rest of the world, try as I might. I hope those large timbers aren't actually needed to keep things out. And I really hope that because I'm outside those walls. Ha! Me, first line of defense against bandits, monsters, and who knows what else. But, to be fair, one necromancer might be less inclined to cause trouble. Those thoughts got me thinking. Maybe I am a bit of a buffer between things out there and in here. But before I could take that thought any further, I arrived at Bits and Bob's. Bob, as usual, was attentive, patient, and very willing to show off his stock. But as I looked at various items, nothing seemed to fit. Nothing was quite right. My anticipation of buying something was quickly draining away, and I found myself wanting to tearfully apologize for wasting his time. Which is when Bob asked the fateful question. Have you considered expanding the areas you search for reagents? That stopped me. Yes, that was the thing. I was suddenly transported to traveling to the Cloud Isles in Madcap's balloon. That would be amazing. That would be... I have a friend, bit of an eccentric, but can weave wood like nothing I've ever seen. He makes boats, calls them coracles. They're not much more than a bit of circular dryness on top of boggy bogginess, but one of those would mean you could navigate through Blastfire Bog. Not that I'd suggest that to most anyone, but then again, you're not most anyone. The bog? Well, it's not flying, that's for sure. But going out in a small boat to explore a new area, gathering new and unique items? Yes. Sold. I'm in. How exciting. Bob and I traded items. He got 70 silver, and I got a paper to take to the coracle maker, Kunk, to show I'd paid properly. So exciting! I couldn't wait to have my first sail, or row, I suppose. Coracles don't have a mast, or a rudder, or a keel, but what my boat will have is a fine rower. I stepped out of the shop with a pep to my step. The sun was a little brighter, the flowers a bit more colorful, Why is someone walking at me? Why, I think he was in the herbology school? And I'm sure I don't know his name. Hey, loser, what are you doing here? You quit, so go back home to your mommy. Ah, well, isn't this delightful? Sorry, do I know you? Yeah, you know me. You're such a failure that you don't even remember who was in your class. Okay. Tongue, stay put. Feet, start moving. Eyes, look away. Mouth, oh, why won't you listen? Sorry, I have to go, so see you. He grabbed my arm. And I see a rodent, a pathetic mouse on your shoulder. That's your familiar? Ha ha, what a joke. I bristled. I stopped and turned. Take your hands off of me. Why, you going to cry? No, but you will. I didn't say that. Mouse-Eye did. And then he jumped from my shoulder onto my attacker's neck and then slid down under his shirt. What happened next was that the boy let go of me and clasped his chest as he screamed in pain. A small red circle started to appear on his shirt. As the boy turned to run away, crying, Mouse-Eye slid out from the shirt cuff and jumped back onto my shoulder. It's not like I bit him all that hard. It's all about placement. Time to leave before anything more happens. and moving on. Blastfire Bog extends from the edge of Glimmerwood Grove Forest and off to the edges of the Moonbreaker Mountain Range. It's a huge expanse that houses all sorts of unique life, including bog goblins, which includes at least one who tried, and failed, to sell Bob inactive fen-toad scurf, and who also tried, and succeeded, in cursing him. And here I was off to see someone named Kunk. I guessed I was about to have dealings with an industrious goblin. Hopefully I wouldn't end up with a curse of my own. As we walked to the bog, Mouse-Eye and I talked about the encounter in the village, and about changes, the very same topic I'd been musing on earlier. After the encounter with Richard, Count von Rannoch, and how the land had defended itself, I felt little fear about being waylaid by a jealous boy, or, if he has friends, a pack of them. I didn't feel invincible, but I did feel much safer than I would have even a couple of weeks ago. Oh, how fast things can change. After a while, we found the piece of shore, if there can be a shore to a bog, where Kunk has his workshop. As we approached it, we called out to let Kunk know we were approaching. There's no sense in staying quiet if that causes a startled, curse-wielding someone to start hurling magic at you before getting a chance to think. Kunk. How to describe him? Start with what you think a bog goblin looks like, then add unsettling, clever eyes and a bearing that gets you thinking that if bog goblins have royalty, here before you stands a likely family member. Even his smell, while strong, wasn't putrid. Exactly. Maybe he bathed in the bog recently. He came out of his shack, cautious, wary, but curious. His eyes were clearly taking us in. "Yeah, what?" he half yelled. "I just bought a coracle. I've paid Bob. Here's the paper." I held it up to show him. "Come!" Kunk turned around and entered his shack. I did my best to prepare for the enclosed version of Kunk. The shack wasn't much beyond his coracle workshop. Strips of wood were all over, some bits woven already, others being prepared. He also had a large pot over the fire. The odor was some sort of adhesive or perhaps sealant. Maybe this was how he kept water out. In a corner was some straw and a blanket. Kunk had made his way to a bare patch of his work table. He slapped it. "Show!" I put the paper down and stepped back. He took it, made at least a show of reading it. Whether he could actually read it is another question. Smelled it, then said, "Okay, follow." We went out the other door and into what must have been his storage area. He had a few boats leaning up against trees. "Pick!" They all looked the same to me, so I asked for some help. "Which one is best?" "All best." "Okay, thanks for the help." As I started looking at each one, he followed. I didn't need to see him to know he was close, if you know what I mean. As I looked at one, he said, "Big, carry lots, paddle hard." Now that was useful. I hadn't considered that the size of the boat would affect the difficulty to use it. I looked at another. "Small, carry little, paddle easy, lift easy, use small, maybe best." And that's how I ended up with Miss Bogfire, the smallest, finest, most nimblest coracle on the Blastfire Bog seas. Kunk carried it easily to a small dock. "Dock here, okay." And there was another thought I hadn't even contemplated yet. Where to keep it when it wasn't in use. But wouldn't he want some compensation for keeping it at his dock? "I can keep it somewhere so that it's not in your way." He looked at me for a second, then said, "Better here. Water up, water down, coracle here, no coracle gone." I started to give that a thought when he added, "You witch, yes?" I said I was. "Help Bob, yes?" I said I had. "Keep here, better." I thanked him, but asked, "Did you give Bob the kludgy mouth?" He looked shocked. "Me? No. Stupid, greedy goblin. Leavin' Bog. You sell, you meet." I was taken back to when I'd wanted to hear how a certain vampire wasn't going to be a problem. I found myself wishing for the same basic thing, only replacing vampire with goblin. But I was also feeling brave, so I decided it was time for a maiden voyage. I'd heard, at some time or other, that when big sailing ships are launched, they are christened using some sort of bubbly wine. Having nothing like that on hand, I scooped a handful of bubbling bog water, dribbled it onto the gunnel, and had a quick naming ceremony. I also asked that if she ever felt like sinking that she do so without me on board. Kunk chuckled. With that done, I set off. It took a few minutes to get used to it. A circular boat doesn't cut through the water so much as unwillingly running it over, so going forward was an effort. Spinning in a circle, however, it was brilliant at doing that, even when I really didn't want to. Like I said, it took a bit to get used to, but I did get going and set off across the water, and the islets, and the trees, and reeds, and... Mousei? How am I supposed to navigate back home? Everything looks the same. He just yawned. I watch. So you can get me back from wherever? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go too far out, initially, but as I found a rhythm, I just kept going deeper in. After a while, I pulled up on a small dryish island. It felt good to hop off, stretch my legs, they were folded under me during my paddling, and looked around. It was very open, very bright. Nothing taller than large scruffy bushes got in the way of the sky. The air hummed with insects of all sorts. Happily, none of them were hungry for witch's blood. I remembered an addendum to the old witch's notes about reagents growing specifically and only in the bog. On a lark, I began to dig next to where I was sitting, and found milkroot. In a minute, I had a good-sized tuber. Into the boat it and we went. Rest time was over. Off we went in a different direction and came to another small islet, this one covered in mushrooms and other low growth. It looked the perfect place for fairy folk to gather, and I was right. Their dust, quite glittery, was all over. It took a bit to gather some up, pinch by pinch, but I did eventually have a nice amount. It was starting to get later in the day, so I started heading in the general direction of back home, but I took an alternate route. As I paddled, I started hearing the unmistakable sounds of toads. I had to go look. As I paddled closer to the islet where the sounds were coming from, toads began to jump, panicked, towards me, which was really weird, until my nose picked up the indescribable reek of bog goblin. Several goblin heads suddenly rose above the grasses, toads continued to jump in all sorts of directions, including towards me, and in all the pandemonium, or perhaps toad-ammonium, there being no pandas here, a large toad ended up in my boat and scooted under the seat. The goblins, who up to this point had been focused solely on toads, spotted me. There were grunts, screams, yells, and a couple of loud belches. One in particular looked enraged. "You, thief! Steal toads!" I started to backpedal as fast as I could. Meanwhile, most of the goblins ran to the water's edge and stopped. However, the really angry one looked around desperately, then started to grab and throw handfuls of mud at me. Goblin plus anger plus mud equals bad aim. I paddled away from there as fast as I could. After a few minutes, I felt safe enough to stop, listen, and assess. No sounds of pursuit, no crashing of angry goblins in the undergrowth or swimming my way. No sounds but for one quiet, perhaps grateful, croaking from under my seat. I peeked underneath. It peered out back. "You're safe?" It just stayed in place. "I can set you on land somewhere." Again, no movement. "I'm heading home, back to my cottage. I'm a witch, by the way, Mistress Sweetwater, at your service." It croaked. Within that croak, I swear I heard, Well, okay. Can I call you Fen, short for fen toad? Another croak. The meaning was more complicated, and to be honest, I didn't understand most of it, but I think part of it was acceptance. Not much happened after that, thank goodness. I was guided back home by both Mousei and Fen. There were a couple of times they argued over the best way back. I pulled up at the dock and was met by Kunk. "You meet! Ha! Have toad! Ha ha! Welcome back!" I unloaded the coracle and then went to help pull it out of the water. "You go! Goblin come! Sun go!" I thanked Kunk, then headed home. The walk back was entirely uneventful. Mousei on one shoulder, Fen on the other, not a word spoken among the three of us. When we got back, Fen found a spot outside near the spring where I collect water to live. Mousei settled back into his usual perch in the spirit house, and I brewed a lovely cup of tea and reflected again on just how fast things can change. And that is the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Now, it's time to do some breathing and stretching. Ready? Let's take a deep breath in together. Here we go. And a stretch. Little extra stretch. Okay, there we go. Now let's talk about what it was that got put together to make that particular episode. All right, we have the creative mixing bowl and the 3 elements to it. And the first one is I was looking away the entire time too. Try that again. Okay, so let's talk about the elements that came together inside the creative mixing bowl to create this episode. And the first one is the guidebook prompts. So let me call that up now. Okay, so there it is. And take a screenshot, and we'll talk about the details in just a second. And 3, 2, 1, and here we go. Okay, so let's talk about the details. Let's highlight a couple of things. So the first thing here is there are 4 areas inside of the High Rannoch game, the Apothecaria game, that are locked. And you need to either buy something, and that's for 2 things, 2 areas, or you need to do something, and that's for the other 2 areas. So the Cloud Isles require a broom, which we don't have yet, and Blastfire Bog requires the coracle. So we just bought that, and that's why we're able to tool around there. The other 2 areas are Dreamwater Depths, and so something needs to happen over at Meltwater Lock. And then the Strange, and then again, that opens when something happens within Heroes Hollow. So we've opened up the first of our advanced areas, the areas that were locked. So we bought the coracle, and now we're able to get into Blastfire Bog. Yay. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to make mention here is when Alicia and I bought the game, and so we bought the PDF version, and so there's a couple of extras that come with it. There's soundtracks and things like that, which we don't use. But the things that we do use is something that was labeled as postcard games. And there are just a few little ailments and a few extra reagents that are very specific to these advanced areas that can be opened. And so we took the opportunity to play with it a little bit, just to gather the reagents. The things that they can cure are no different than anything else that you can get inside of the regular base game. It's just simply they're just additional reagents, and it would be fun to play with them a little bit. And there was a mention earlier during the curse when Bob was cursed. He got Kludgy Mouth, and that was all because of Fentoad's scarf. And so that has come up again. And Blastfire Bog is where you get it. The other thing to note about that is that Fentoad's scarf, the way it works is you need to gather the reagent with the toad right there at the table, because it goes that bad that quickly. And so having the toad jump into the boat and then taking it home means I will forever have fresh Fentoad scarf available. Okay, so now let's move on to what's been written before, or where do we stand now? So we know about Bob at Bits and Bobs, right? We've encountered him a couple of times, and he has a stock room. Okay, know that too. Would it be big enough, and would it make sense for him to have these coracles, right? Someone has to carry the coracle from the workshop where they're working over to Bob's place, and then you have to carry the coracle from there over to the bog in order to use it. It seems like an awful lot of manual transport. And so I figured, well, we'll just have the manufacturer right there at Water's Edge. Why not? Everything's available right there anyway. And since we had the bog goblin element before, why not have a bog goblin that's a little more industrious, who's operating right there? And he's just sort of this fun little character to have. And so I figured it's a great introduction to a new character. And I know this is part of the imagination bit, but it all kind of weaves in and out, right? You mix in the mixing bowl and it starts to become hard to distinguish between the guidebook and what came before and what you're making up new right now. It all sorts to become one and the same thing. That's what happens. And regarding bog goblins, we know that they're able to throw a curse, and so maybe there are ones that are a little bit more intelligent and perhaps even royalty or more noble families or something to distinguish more intelligent goblins from less intelligent goblins. Okay, now moving on to the new stuff, the imagination bit. So because this is the first area we're unlocking, and it's like an advanced area, I wanted to set things up to feel a little bit more wild, a little bit more dangerous, a little bit more, if you're going to put the effort into going to visit this place, let's show that it's a worthwhile place to go to, and there's a reason why it was locked off when you were a lesser level. One last thing that I wanted to talk about with the bog goblin is how might a bog goblin speak? Because we do need to have him speak in order to be able to communicate. And so I thought something sharp, something quick, limited syllables, but using those syllables, to the max effect. Like, quick, you go. San gan, you go. Yeah, san go, you go. Things like that. If we ever encounter a troll, trolls would be sort of like that, but slower. Me troll, me go down to hole, me eat meat, me sleep. Troll. So yeah, just some thoughts on how to characterize, how to personalize your species creation. So something that kind of dawns on me as we're going through this is that so we've had to buy the coracle because it's in the rules, very heavy guidelines for Apothecaria, that you need the coracle in order to navigate the bog. But why can't you just simply fly using a broom? Why can't you just use a broom for everything? And you could. Right? You can make things work so that it happens that way and everything opens up and everything's, fine and just dandy and whatever. That does a couple of things. One is it takes away the ability to challenge yourself a bit. It takes away the some of the necessities of doing some things that require doing according to the guidelines. And so we should at some point have some reasonable explanation as to why it's the coracle that you use in the bog and not a broom. Maybe the broom doesn't work for whatever reason, or don't know. But we need to come up with something so that this story makes more sense, right? And that's something that can be brought up later on, or we can just ignore it and not deal with it. I want to handle it at some point. Okay, so with the bit of bother in town with Mouse Eye, first off, Mouse Eye's predilection is to remain hidden, to watch unseen. If there's going to be some sort of kerfuffle, you really need to have Mouse Eye either be present or get caught looking somewhere he shouldn't be looking or something. I thought perhaps it would be best to start to have Mouse Eye show up. One is and I raised this in a prior episode, in a prior discussion, is Mouse Eye real? Because he wasn't showing up so that anyone saw. It could plausibly be seen merely as one of, or something that Mr. Sweetwater saw, that it was some sort of mental construct, some sort of ethereal something or other, a ghost, not fully physical, not fully tangible, not really there. So how do we start to make Mouse Eye a bit more real in the world? And this is one way to do it. If he bites somebody, that's real. I don't condone violence. Please don't take it like that. But I did want to have a little something that happened. And I also wanted to put something in that reflects my experience in school. I was the kid that would get bullied a lot, bullied in the neighborhood a lot. And so, you know, not pleasant memories of that. Still, you know, gray hair missing on top, and I can still just like things about, you know, school and whatnot. So I'm having this episode in here is a little bit of revenge. It's just imaginary. Never wanted to hurt anybody, but oh, it felt so good just to have teeth sunk into a little tender bit. Anyway, so regarding the physical front, we did have Francie see Mouse Eye, and that's how people started to believe that Mouse Eye's his name is Mortimer Wiggle Whiskers the Third, or Dexalance, or Magnificarius. I don't even remember what all it was. I don't have it written down here. It's not easy to access. But it was some long name. And but Francie could be seen as a unreliable observer. And that is one of these things that can happen, right? You can have someone who is a character, but their known judgment is questioned. And so they say something, but you don't really believe it. Like, oh, Francie, you're just making stuff up again. So this will help to make things a little bit more solid, a little bit more real. So moving on into the Panzer section, it's suddenly gotten quite dark. The heavy clouds have moved overhead, or not. It's about to rain again. Okay. Fun with Easter eggs and references. So before we start to get into how, let's talk about what. So what are we talking about? So references are overt and obvious references or acknowledgments from another source. And so in this instance, the obvious source is the Robin Williams movie, Mrs. Doubtfire. I'm a big fan of Robin Williams. And so when we had the Blastfire Bog come up, I thought, well, wouldn't this just be ideal to have, you know, the name of the boat, the coracle that's going to be going in there? And all I heard instantly was Mist Bogfire. So that's what we went with. And it could have been Blastfire, it could have been Bog, yeah, whatever. But so Mist Bogfire it was. Anyways, it was a reference to Mrs. Doubtfire, the Robin Williams film. So that's a reference. So an Easter egg on the same lines, but it is more hidden. It is something that only your fans are going to be able, or maybe your family and friends are going to be able to figure out. So, for instance, I haven't done a deliberate Easter egg, I don't think, in the episodes just yet. But I have done work with other publications, including Moss Piglet, and I'm in there monthly. And so sometimes I make mention of the number 17, and it'll show up in random places. So 17 is an Easter egg, and you wouldn't know it's an Easter egg unless you happen to know that 17 is the first of a few answers that Alicia considers her standard answers whenever someone says something like, "Can I ask you a question?" or "I have a question." She would start to offer her pre-existing list of answers. And so 17 was the first. 17, blue, and then there's a couple others. But yeah, the only way you're going to know that 17 is special is if you know that about us, or you listen to this bit right now, and then you go back and you read the stuff about Moss that I submitted into Moss Piglet, and you see the 17s and like, aha, Easter egg. So that's what's going on there. So again, with Easter eggs, so Taylor Swift is quite the Easter egg aficionado. In a recent video, I think it's called Fate of Ophelia, and she put in over 100 Easter eggs, things for the fans, things that you're only going to know if you happen to know things about her family, things that she's revealed about, various odd aspects of her life and whatnot. And then you can look and you can see, oh, okay, that's a picture of Taylor Swift when she was doing this, or those are the colors that are associated with that, and on and on and on and on and on. So whether you put in something that's more obvious or you put in something that's more hidden, they can be really fun things that you put in, because as you go back, and remember, you are your first reader, right? So when you're going back and you're reading, you get to experience that feeling of, aha, I stuck in that Easter egg. I stuck in that reference, and I remember why it was that I did it. And so for you, there's this rich experience of putting it in and playing with it a bit. And over the next episodes, I do play more and more with Easter eggs and references. And I look forward to seeing if anyone finds any. Send me, put it in the chat, or send me an email, something. Let me know you found it. Let me know if you think it's fun. Are you putting it in your work? Are you writing along and you stuck something in? Well done on you, and let me know. I'm curious. I really want to know how things are going. Anyway, with all that, let us move on to the drawingXpressions haiku, a creative space, holistically supportive. Please like, share, subscribe. All help will be wonderful. Sharing in particular, that'll help us get our subscribers up, and we're still looking to get above, or we're still trying to reach the 650 mark. That would be nice. So that's everything that I wanted to cover in this video. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed the explanation and the discussion and all of it. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time when the next episode drops. And until then, bye for now.